Welcome back to a Slice of News, where I cut you off a slice of news. ICE's thuggish and murderous activities in Minneapolis may be what cost Republicans dearly in the upcoming midterm elections. President Trump ran on being strong on immigration, and his Republican colleagues fully backed him up. But with the tide turning against the administration when it comes to immigration enforcement, and just how overzealous and violent their enforcement agents are being, with seeming full support of the president and his administration, that seemingly unwavering support may be quite a liability when people go into the voting booth in November. And it's something that's got a lot of Republican politicians pretty nervous. In recent months, the administration has pivoted to being incredibly anti-immigrant, in large part thanks to people like Stephen Miller, and how immigrants make this country worse, and the way to make America great again is mass deportations, with even those as high up in the administration as Vice President J.D. Vance pushing the narrative that less foreigners is good for America and actually does things like make housing prices lower. But it's also a messaging that's becoming less and less popular with the majority of the American people. Republican Senator Tom Tillis was quoted as saying, "This is about regaining the trust of the American people on this issue, and I really think we're losing it on an issue that we should be winning on." And while Senator Tillis is probably the only prominent Republican willing to say out loud that his party is losing when it comes to the immigration issue, he's likely far from the only one thinking it, and only feels emboldened to speak out because he's about to retire and has nothing left to lose politically. But those within the Republican orbit are getting nervous. Republican strategist Jason Rowe said that the administration has lost control of the narrative. Democrats are really, really mad, and they cannot wait to go vote. And I'm just not seeing that in any polling I've seen on the Republican side. And he's right. Those on the left are really fired up right now when it comes to just how extreme border enforcement is being right now. And they're not about to let up, which is a really big problem for the Republican Party, since a lot of Trump's self-styled image of a strongman was built on being tough and strong on immigration. So if the support for that is eroding, that image is eroding, and with him goes the Republican Party as a whole, since they've tied themselves fully to him. So when one goes down, the entire Republican ship goes down with him. While it's been true historically, the party of the incumbent president loses a lot of ground in Congress during the midterms. They are poised to see massive losses as displeasure with the president and his party are reaching a boiling point. And while the midterm elections themselves are only a little under a year away, voters are likely not going to forget what is happening now when it comes time to vote. The Republican Party has shown itself to be the party of violence and division. And increasingly, the American people are saying that is not who they want leading their country. Republicans have long styled themselves the cowboy hero who comes in and fights the bad guys for American values and apple pie. But the recent events in Minneapolis have put in sharp relief that that couldn't be farther from the truth. If anything, they've showed themselves to be the party of the mass outlaw who doesn't think twice about putting a bullet in an innocent victim if they get in their way. Rather than the hero, they very clearly become the villain. And the administration isn't only losing the support of prospective voters. Prominent podcast host and Trump supporter Joe Rogan has said that even he's starting to have reservations about just how extreme the tactics of immigration enforcement have become, saying, quote, "Are we really going to be the Gestapo? Where's your papers? Is that what we've come to?" Famed musical artist Bruce Springsteen decried ICE as Trump's federal thugs and released a song titled "The Streets of Minneapolis," on which he references the murder of 37-year-old Alex Preddy by name, as well as prominent sports figures like NBA player Steph Curry, who was quoted as saying that he felt there was a lot of change that needs to happen when it came to the actions of ICE and immigration enforcement policy. The administration has even lost support in the world of business, where over 60 corporate executives, including leaders of United Healthcare, Best Buy, and Target, released a public letter that called for de-escalation following the murder of Alex Preddy. Even Apple CEO Tim Cook, released a memo to the company's employees that said he was heartbroken by the event in Minneapolis and that he believed America is strongest when we live up to our highest ideals, when we treat everyone with dignity and respect, no matter who they are or where they are from, and we embrace our shared humanity. And this is a man who donated $1 million to President Trump's inauguration, was at the inauguration, and presented the president with a custom-made glass plaque with a gold base back in August. Venture capitalist and tech billionaire Vinod Khosla called it out a little bit more plainly when he said that he condemned the, quote, macho ICE vigilantes running amok. The support for the administration is starting to erode, especially when it comes to immigration specifically. And that erosion could very easily grow into an avalanche that could bury the Republican Party as a whole and end any chance they may have had to retain power any time in the foreseeable future. The harder the administration pushes on how great ICE is doing and how justified they've been in the actions that they've taken, the harder the pushback from the other side has become, feeling they know what they saw on those videos. And what they saw was ICE agents acting as armed thugs, executing American citizens like Renee Good and Alex Preddy in cold blood. And they are no longer going to stand idly by while ICE continues to murder others in the streets. While it may be too early to call it entirely, it seems pretty clear that the administration has lost the messaging war when it comes to immigration, and they have found themselves on the wrong side. And if they truly cannot win it back, they can be assured that their performance in the midterms will be a disaster for them. But of course, a disaster entirely of their own making, one which there may not be any way back from. According to a recent Associated Press poll, only 38% of U.S. adults approve of how the president's handling immigration, which is down over 10% from 49% back in March. And even amongst their own Republican voters, the president's approval rating has fallen over 10% from 88% in March to only 76%, according to a different Associated Press poll. And a Fox News poll conducted last week found that almost 60% of voters described ICE as being too aggressive. If they're losing this much ground with self-described Republicans, it seems pretty clear this administration is, as they say, thoroughly cooked, and the Republican Party is set to be thoroughly decimated when it comes voting time. The modern Republican Party is collapsing under its own weight, and I'm entirely here for it. And really, what we're poised to see was always inevitable. The party had hitched itself onto a failing brand, that of Donald Trump, and he has molded and shaped the Republican Party into something so extreme, so far right, so divisive, that there was no way to sustain it long term. When it became the party that supported murder in the streets by its own federal agents, it had already lost, and the era of Republican supremacy is set to be as dead as Keith Porter Jr., yet another man that ICE agents murdered in only the last several weeks. They've dug themselves deep into a hole that I really don't see how they're going to escape from. They've now become the party of Donald Trump, so when he fails, they fail, and failure is one of Donald Trump's only skills. Once they lose their majorities in Congress, and it's looking like a virtual guarantee that they will come November, it's just hard to find an argument why they should ever be given it back again. Republican leadership in the Trump era has shown itself to be a complete failure, and they're somehow managing to lose the faith of the American people from both sides of the political spectrum. Other than the most diehard of Trump supporters, who would be perfectly fine with him personally shooting an anti-ICE protester, the Republican Party is losing all its footing. And while the modern Democratic Party is certainly not without its own faults, by comparison, it's looking pretty good. And as a result, they're set to pick up a lot on midterm day. Renee Good, Alex Preddy, and Keith Porter should be alive right now. Their deaths at the hands of ICE agents are unbelievably tragic and should never be forgotten. But if their deaths are what help drive a stake through the modern Republican Party, they will not have died in vain. But it's also because the president can see his end coming and his party's upcoming demotion from power that he is at his most dangerous. Some are saying that the next half year is going to make the first year of the Trump presidency look like the easy part. The old guard is dying, but it's going to try to pull down everything it can with it. A cornered dog is at its most vicious, and Donald Trump right now is a cornered dog. Turbulence always precedes a great change, and that is what we are on the cusp of. The tide is turning, and massive Republican losses in the midterms is a beginning, not the end. Good, positive change is coming, but it's going to be a really bumpy ride until we get there. So we got to strap in and endure, because things will get harder before they get better. But they will get better. Republicans are afraid of losing in the midterms, and they should be, because it will not end there. The dark times we are experiencing now and will experience in the near future will end. And when they do, we are not likely to go back in that direction again. A chapter is closing for them, and once it does, it is unlikely to reopen again. The Republican Party has shown us who they truly are deep down, and the American people have seen it and said, we don't want that, and I know I certainly don't. Alright guys, that'll be it for this episode of A Slice of News. I've been your host, Mr. Slice, and until next time when I cut you off another slice of news. And don't forget to rate and review the show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.